Welcome everybody to today's conversation from our 100 Women to Watch campaign. What we're talking about today is a topic that we'd like to call redefining power. This is the future of female leadership across industries. And we're not just talking about leadership today, we're actually talking about transformation, because the women who are rewriting the rules, many of them in this room, we're doing things like expanding what's possible and leading in ways that honor humanity, vision, legacy. Each of our panelists has literally built influence not through hierarchy, but through heart, through empathy, through innovation, and has the courage to show up fully as themselves here today. So as we dive in, I'm going to invite you, one, to listen for the moments that spark something in you, and two, if you're with us live, feel free to contribute in the comments. We can see them and you can ask a question and we can respond to them and invite you into the conversation from where you are. So thank you for being here, everyone, including our esteemed panelists. Let's go ahead and begin. Okay, our first question is, there we go, is that many of us were raised in systems that really equated leadership with things like hierarchy and control or being tough, and pushing through. I'm curious, what was the moment, maybe even it was a breaking point, that made you realize that you needed to lead differently? And anyone can pick up this question here. You're so welcome to just hop right in.
I'll start. I'm Caroline Boudreau, and I think we've been blessed because society hasn't wanted to hear from us, and so we've had to really develop a sense of listening. And I remember this kind of aha moment in my life when it kind of started my company, which is the Miracle Foundation, where I was at an orphanage, and I had put a baby on a wooden bed to sleep. And, I heard her bones hit that bed, and I just thought, unacceptable. And so I went down to the orphanage leader and I said, I want a mattress on every one of these beds. This is just unbelievable. I can't, this is just terrible. We got to have a mattress on every bed. And she said, do you think that we could start with some clean water? And, it was at that moment that I just realized, wow, we kind of think that leadership is all about knowing everything and super direction and super hierarchical. But as women, we've kind of learned like, oh, we have this superpower, this listening superpower, listening not just for facts, but for emotion and for intent, that really helps us be leaders, because we can drive systems from the stakeholders that need them and know them, to the top. And so we get to go bottoms up instead of tops down. And I just think that's the future of leadership, that collaborative, stakeholder driven, listening approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listening, it's why we have two ears and one mouth, right?
Yeah, I'll go next. And yeah. I'll say that I was lucky to have been raised by the woman that I was raised by, because she came from, her parents were older when they had her. So it was a generation of where, women or girls are to be seen and not heard. And so my mom was kind of hell bent to change that with us girls. And so I was really lucky to have grown up with a mom who shared those stories back when, she would share with her dad that maybe she wanted to join the military, and she was told that, little girls don't do that, or she wanted to be a veterinarian, and well, you can't do that because you're a woman. And, when you turn 18, you're to get out of the house and get married and have babies. And she had us. So, and I'm thankful she did do that, because I have an amazing mom who just always raised us with confidence and with kindness. So when I'm sitting here listening to the first story, is I'm thinking, I was raised just to be kind. And I have learned that throughout my life, that if you can just be kind, that will get you so far in leadership and in life.
Absolutely. Right. We are humans, right? We're not human doings, we're human beings. So being kind plays a major part. Thank you for tapping into that, Captain Kelly. Sydney, Michaela, Latoya.
Yeah, I would add on to that. I grew up in a two-parent household with a mother and a father, and my mom was actually tough. Um, but I also saw her be very nurturing and very kind, and she was always doing, and she's still always doing for others. And so it was kind of like I think I got that balance of how to how to be tough and strong and confident, but kind of balance that out with the nurturing side that kind of taps into what people need, right? Like I, as the founder of Marble Wines, which is woman owned, woman led, I am building this community of women. But I was able to do that by really kind of nurturing what they wanted to kind of bring to my organization. So I had so many women that were raising their hands saying, I want to help, I want to do this, I want to do that. And instead of, saying, well, no, I can't do this, or no, you can't do that, or no, we can't do that, it was like, okay, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's see how it, works. And as a result of that, I have, women in multiple different places that are, selling wine for me, hitting the pavement and getting the wine into store. And it also gives them that sense of accomplishment as well when you're able to give them like the space, like, and they have other jobs, right? So like this opens up a space that allows them to be creative in their own ways, contribute in the ways that they want to contribute versus someone telling them that it has to be a certain type of way. So when women come to me and say they want to help or I want to try to do this, I'm like, do it, but I also empower them to own that process, right? Like, okay, that's your customer. So now you're going to have to keep in contact with them. You're going to have to check in with them and just empowering them to even own how they're going to lead kind of their own, retail, customer group that they have. So it's just breeding leadership into other people. And I think it does start a lot of us with our mothers and how they raised us and kind of allowed us to be leaders in our homes, and in our communities.
Very good point. That's where leadership starts, within the household. Thank you for that, Latoya. Sydney?
I completely agree. I think I come from like a powerhouse of a mother who, similar to what Latoya was saying, like she can be tough, but more like in the professional sense, not necessarily on me, but she always like bred confidence and also approachability. I think like as a leader at the company that she previously worked at, she was someone who was approachable and that anyone, working with her felt comfortable to go to her about anything, whether it was a new idea or an issue they were having. And so that's something that I think both Michaela and I try to instill in any of, who we're working with or any of our employees or our staff. But I also think too, that like a moment specifically for me or several moments that shaped the way that I want to be as a leader, especially as a female. In college, I had several internships. And then even right after college, my like first job right out the gate was all at different completely female-owned, female-led companies, two of which one was like a marketing agency, one was like an apparel company, and then another was a hair accessories company. And in each of those like professional settings, I always felt heard. I always felt that my input was valued and that, it was like a community that I was working in. And again, approachability. I felt like I could talk to, my superior or boss about anything and it would be valued, it would be heard. And that's definitely something that we bring into how we work with anyone in our business. We're in the beverage industry and that can be very intimidating. We make Shirley Temple cocktails and we're often in a lot of rooms that are just male centric. It's all men. And we're two young women in our 20s pitching the idea of Shirley Temples, which sometimes these men haven't even heard of before. And so we do have to be confident, but approachable, professional. But, you know, I think we're owning the way that we're doing it. And we are confident about the fact that we're a female team and that we are breaking boundaries, breaking into this industry that is so male centric. And we're doing it with like appropriate leadership.
Yeah, I think on the other hand of that as well, like I've had positions, you know, where I've had kind of the opposite experience of Sydney, where it's, you know, maybe I felt uncomfortable or that the person I was working with was so tough and I felt like our personalities didn't match. And so I felt like I knew from the way that I didn't like being treated in the workplace of how I wanted to do that when I was in a position of leadership. And, Sid and I always say, you know, people say business isn't personal, but to us, it's the most personal thing. And a lot of the things when we hire people and everything, ultimately they end up becoming our friends because that's just how we run our business. We're best friends ourselves. So it seems a little bit silly to us that we wouldn't bring our employees into our little friend group. And so, we try and be like as friendly as possible. And we reach, you know, we meet with lots of vendors and things. And we often say like, what happened to just like the basic, like treat people the way you want to be treated and like treat people with kindness and that kind of thing. Cause it's just, you would think that reaction in that way that, you know, we treat people with empathy or with kindness is just common sense, but for some people it's not. So when, you know, that you reach that point, it's really difficult to kind of like combat that. But I think knowing that, you know, our main route as a business is to just be kind and confident and personable and stay true to who we are in any room that we are in, whether it's pitching to a room full of men with our Shirley Temple cocktails or in just meetings with our employees and whatnot. But
I love what you're bringing to the table here, figuratively and like literally, because we've got LaToya, who's also in the spirits industry, right? And there's a lot of things that you get to deal with similarly there. But also we've got Captain Kelly, who is in a male-dominated industry, right? So like we've got this, you know, in common. And I'm just curious, like what's coming up as we're discovering these things, you know, about each other. And we're talking about female leadership today.
You know, like there's probably nothing more male dominated than the yachting industry. I mean, if you think of Captain, I mean, even when I punch something into ChatGPT about Captain, it will reply back with he, him, his, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And still, even when I go to school for my continuing education, the captain is still referred to even in books as he or him. And you know, for me, people have said, well, you know, how much discrimination have you met? How much, you know, how hard has it been being, you know, one of the few women? And, you know, my response is a little bit different because one, I've run into what I've seen as two naysayers since I've been in the industry, which is almost 20 years now. And one, it was culturally that they thought I shouldn't be a captain. And the other one, the guy was just a butthead, and no matter who you were, you couldn't make him happy. So, but it's also how I chose to perceive it and how I approached the men. And coming into this industry, knowing that it was very male dominated, I approached the men with a great deal of respect. And when you show them that you're here to learn, that you're not a know-it-all, that you're going to treat them with respect, you need them to help you get to where you want to go. I found that it was arms wide open. And I often say that if it wasn't for the men in this industry, I would not be where I am. On the flip side of that, as I've seen some younger women come into the industry kind of slinging elbows with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they're not well received because of that. But also too, my mindset is one that I put the blinders on, so to speak, and I'm not going to allow myself to see someone that doesn't want me to succeed, doesn't want me to excel. I put my blinders on, I focus, and the only people that I let in my bubble are those people that want to see me do well. So mindset is a huge part of it as well. But for me, I mean, there's been a couple guys that haven't been welcoming, but really, I think the way that I've approached them and respected them has made all the difference in my career, because now I'm one of the very well respected captains that even the guys will reach out to for input. And that's pretty cool to see it all come full circle. But again, I think it's how I approached them years ago when I was entering into the industry.
Thank you, Captain Kelly. And like what you're saying is, it's also, like trickling into how can you lead, with empathy and authenticity, as opposed to doing what you're talking about, like slinging those elbows and like trying to race your way up to the top, right? We may have some different stories, for each other. When I first started my career, I went to college for architecture. I was one of 5 women who graduated from the School of Architecture, at that time. It was just insane. And, eventually I translated those skills into public relations, but just to see what it was like, to have a beginning and a start there, it really opened my eyes to not just what the climate was, but to what's possible, and how important it is that we embrace our presence in any industry. Latoya, I'm curious, did you have any, experiences breaking into the spirits industry along these lines?
Absolutely. And spirits is just one part of what I do. Like Captain Kelly, I actually work in a male-dominated industry for my 9 to 5. I'm in trucking and transportation. So, so I deal with a lot of, man, it's a mid-sized organization that was created by a man, and there's lots of men who, work in. And I was identified as someone who could come in and be a part of leadership in the organization, bring something different to the organization as it evolves and the industry is evolving. But what was made clear to me in the beginning was that I can't make these people like you. I can't make these people, respect you. And so that was the work that I had to go in and do, for myself, and just break those barriers. And it was, I'm the only attorney in the organization. And so it'd be easy for me to come in and say, you can't do that. You can't do that. We're not going to do this and all of that, right? Because legally, I understand what liability looks like, but also understanding that, yeah, you got to pay attention to liability, but sometimes it's just a business decision that has to be made, and you have to determine how much risk you're going to actually take on. And so it might be a legal issue, but can we bear the risk of it? And I had to learn how to have those types of conversations in the room. And when it was more of a conversation versus you can or can't do, that's what allowed the respect to kind of, because it was like, oh, she's not coming in to tell us what we can do. I would give them options. I would say, these are my recommendations, right? And I knew that I would, regardless of what they chose, it was going to be, a good option for them, because I wasn't going to put a bunch of like crappy recommendations in front of them. But they don't necessarily recognize that, right? They just know that they get to make the decision at the end of the day. But we've kind of already made the decision based upon what we put in front of them. And so learning how to kind of finesse those dynamics, that you can tap into your femininity, if you will, without, objectifying and sexualizing yourself, was one of the things that I feel really proud about being able to come into this industry and do. In addition to Marble Wines, I just got my distribution license here in Georgia. So I am actually now a Black woman-owned distribution company here in the state of Georgia. And I don't think that there's any others here. So I'm super excited about what I'm going to do with that in 2026. But I started that because I got tired of going into rooms and having men tell me no. I got tired of them saying that they weren't going to pick up my product without even trying my product. I got tired of going into rooms and having someone trying to, sexualize me and make inappropriate comments to me. And so I decided, you know what? I don't like the Georgia franchise system anyway. So I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to do it the way that I want to. And again, I'm bringing some incredible women along with me, because just like I've had to be subjected to those things, I want to create spaces that prevents them from having to be subjected to those things.
Well, we're not available in Georgia yet, so we'd love to hop on that.
2026, I got you.
Wow, there's so many connections that can be made here. This is just incredible. And let's make sure, Caroline, that you're feeling inclusive in this conversation. What has been your experience with, diversity or adversity, in a wider sense, being in the nonprofit industry?
I think, we talk about, we need to have more representation, but it's not really just representation. It's really redistribution of wealth. Because if we do have a seat at the table, when we do get a seat at the table, if we're playing the same game, which is about money and control, if we're playing that game, then, we're really never going to make the difference that we need to. We talked about using kindness and compassion as our driving principles. I think that's really important. And I think that there is, we got to be okay with being uncomfortable. We got to be okay with it's not comfortable. And what happens when you have a boardroom full of people that have the same kind of thinking, maybe they have the same kind of background, maybe they're all of the same race, maybe they're all of the same, socioeconomic status. When you have a boardroom of people that's made up of that, boy, you can make decisions pretty quickly. You can move things pretty quickly, but you get some divergence of thought and some divergence of religion and race. And, things get a little messy, and you start to get a lot of different opinions because you have all these different backgrounds. You have all these different dimensions, if you will. And so, I think the ability to be uncomfortable with the changes that are required is like a big part of what we all have to agree to do. And it's not just uncomfortable. And it takes longer to make a decision when you have diversity of thought and diversity of people. But a lot of times, if you're willing to sit in that, you come up with you come up with just so many more different, diverse, creative things to do. And then I also think, it's all about the stakeholder. Who are the stakeholders at the table? If I can't know if a system works if I'm not in the system. We have to listen to the people in the system. They're the ones that need to be designing for us, designing structures, designing programs. And so, I think what everybody's saying is so great. I really do agree. And I think, like I said, it's not about just representation. It's about redistribution. And to me, that's when things are going to change.
Redistribution is an excellent word, because there's so many ways that we can describe our economy right now. We talk about an attention, economy. And if we're redistributing our attention, then where is it going? And where has it been, right? There's a lot that we can talk about here. And I'm curious, because, being a woman in many industries, there's a lot of things that can go on behind the scenes that people are just not aware of. Maybe even some emotional labor that people are dealing with. Maybe even some physical things, if we think about, like menopause or, pregnancy, even the beginnings of that process, the end of that process. There's so much to be said. So I'm curious if there's any part of leadership right now that maybe you would wish for women that maybe wouldn't feel so heavy, that you have been aware of, and that you would like to bring to the forefront here, because I'm curious how we can stay grounded, as women in the industry. Go ahead, Captain Kelly.
Yeah, it's this one like's been at the top of my mind here recently. So I'm 44, and I got to say, it's this perimenopause stuff. And it's just like, I was saying to my crew the other day, I was like, I feel like I can't find the right word, or I get tongue tied, or the brain fog, or literally the 1 minute I'm burning up, the next I'm freezing, And so it's been a little bit yeah, the physical aspects of it, are uncomfortable, but then handling it emotionally for myself is because I'm like, okay, you read some articles and you see where some women feel like they lose their edge. And let me tell you, you got to have an edge to put $25 million worth of super yacht on a dock without scratching it in front of huge crowds of people. Like, the pressure is on, and having a little bit of an edge to you to be able to do that. I'm like, what if I lose my edge through this? How long am I going to be able to be, a captain? Am I, you see these guys that have been on the seas, they're 65 years old and they're still on the seas, and how do I manage this? And then, then there's another side of me that I lead with authenticity and with kindness and with compassion and genuineness. And I know some of my male counterparts do as well, but unfortunately, we still live in a society where the men feel like they can't be vulnerable, and that's very sad, but I am. And so I'm very empathetic. And so I naturally take on other people's feelings of maybe frustration or fear or sadness and even happiness. I take on the good emotions too, but we're a crew of 14, and we still have all of the same issues every other industry does. But the difference with us is, you guys may go home at 5 o'clock, but we all live together, work together, play together, eat together, share a cabin together. What you see behind me is the width of my captain's cabin. And I share this cabin with my chief engineer, who is also my partner. So this is it. This space is mine. So all of us crew, and the crew they have bunk beds. They share a bathroom. The spaces are so small that you can't get dressed at the same time. And so that turns into a little bit of a pressure cooker. So if somebody's sad, or somebody's frustrated with something, but it also lends to the happy emotions too. Like, it really magnifies anything that's going on within the crew due to the environment that we live on. I mean, we are literally together with everybody 24/7. And when you go to sea, you're really together 24/7, because it's not like when you're at shore and you need to take a break and you go for a walk. So the perimenopause thing is one of the things I've been struggling with here lately. And then also just on the other side of leadership and being, I think, a woman in leadership is sometimes taking on maybe too much of the crew's stuff. But that's me. That's who I am. That's why I have such low turnover. That's why I have crews that have gone with me from boat to boat to boat. So yeah, I guess those are my couple things that are going on right now.
I hear
feel like
you.
for Sid and I, it's the constant pressure to grow. We often talk about like the window of relevancy, and we're coming up on 3 years of, from when we had the thought to creating it and to selling it and whatnot. And we don't want to miss our window of relevancy. And so there's a lot of pressure that we feel all the time on trying to make sure that we're, did we do enough today to make sure we're getting where we want to be? And if we didn't, then we're hard on ourselves because it just felt like a lot or overwhelming. Personally, my anxiety has been through the roof this past year. I had to get some medication because I really just couldn't do it anymore. And that is all because I now own this business, but I'm very I love what we do, and I'm very privileged to do it with my best friend. And so when, things do get hard, we transition our call to, so what shows are you watching right now? Let's change the mindset for a second. I'm getting married in April, and she's my maid of honor. So it's let's talk about wedding planning for a second. We just need a break. And so I think that having each other, and each of us only knows all of the ins and outs and the happy or insane things that are going on. And either way, it's just nice to have a grounding moment between the two of us, because we could talk to our other friends or our family members, and they can only offer so much advice when they really don't know the depth of what's going on. So I will say it is nice to have a co-founder who is also my best friend.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I definitely think that the pressure is something that we are dealing with all the time. But also, this is a completely new industry for us, a completely new venture entirely. Prior to this, we both did social media. We actually owned a social media marketing agency. So to go from doing that and essentially operating other companies, other small businesses, social media platforms to let's make a canned cocktail that has alcohol in it as well is a big leap of just kind of into an abyss of something we had no idea what it was going to be like. So I think on top of the pressure of trying to grow, trying to expand and capitalize on that window of relevancy, it's also just learning things every single day. Every day we learn something new about the industry, about the operations, about employing people, and there's so many legal ramifications and just restrictions and things specifically with alcohol, and I'm sure Latoya can relate to that as well. But we are constantly learning, and I think like Michaela said, having kind of that second person as a bounce board that knows exactly what's going on definitely helps. Talking to my mom as a previous businesswoman, it definitely helps as well, but she was not in the alcohol industry or the beverage industry. And so like Michaela said, it can become daunting to feel like you can't talk to anyone because you can only really scratch the surface of what's actually going on in your brain, because you can't dive into everything with that person. So having Michaela definitely helps, and we're able to kind of regroup and just stay on the same page, but help each other emotionally, and tread the waters together definitely helps for sure.
Love the way that you're able to pivot, in conversation and emotionally to keep each other sane and, in the space. So that way we can regulate the way that we need to in order to continue to be functional optimally as much as we can.
Look at that comment. You just made my day. Susan, she just says menopause will only add to your edge. Thank you so much. I'm glad to know that I'm only going to get better and get stronger and edgier. That's freaking awesome. So you know what? You just totally showed me I need to change my mindset. It's fixed. It's solved now. Now that I know my edge is just going to get tougher. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Look at this. We're being contributed to from the audience. Amazing. Thank you for being here, Susan, and your wonderful contribution to this conversation. And here we go, right? So we've got this other thing talking about the economy and what it looks like. There's also this thing that we're presencing called the collaboration economy. So maybe this is a new model that we can really role model, like Sydney and Michaela, are collaborating and creating something really amazing. Latoya, you have a partner too, right?
Yeah, I have a partner in Marble. I have a partner in distribution side of things too, and they're both women. And I've got women sales people, and and the great thing about it is from a movement of product, whether I'm moving it from California to Georgia or domestically, locally, within Georgia, I have my transportation logistics people behind me. So, I came in and working for them, and now it's kind of like they're working for me, right? To help me build and grow. And so I think that's just also the power of how women can take all of these different things that they touch and figure out how to innovate and how to pull it together and how to build and just make it work for you. I mean, ultimately you would say distribution, transportation sounds like two totally different things, but there's synergies, there. And I'm able to rely on somebody else's expertise to kind of do an aspect of that I can't do and I don't want to do and don't want to have to learn. as women, I think one of our challenges sometimes is delegating. We'll take on all of, the things and sit down and say, well, I'm just going to do it myself. And I'm definitely guilty of that. But this process of collaborating with other women is teaching me how to better delegate, because there's people that are willing to do the work, that can do the work. You just have to give them an opportunity to do the work. Sometimes you got to teach them how to do the work, but they can get it done. And also, kind of managing your expectations, and understand everyone's not going to do it like you, but that doesn't mean that, it can't still be effective in accomplishing the overall goal. So, so that's what, I kind of look at it as, in terms of partnership and collaborating with, other women. Because I have phenomenal women around me, but none of them do it the way that I do it. But if I got frustrated and said, well, I'm just going to do it myself, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Like, I still need what their contributions are to make my businesses successful.
Yeah, there's so much there, LaToya. So I call it the Nemo effect. There's this scene in Finding Nemo where all the fish get caught in the net and they're all just struggling to survive. And Nemo swims, down, and he tells everybody, swim down. And the father's on the outside and he's saying, swim down. And they all start swimming in the same direction and they ultimately break the net. And that is really the future of leadership, in my opinion. Number one is having a vision. Steve Jobs said 1,000 songs in your pocket. John F. Kennedy said a man on the moon by, the end of the decade. We're saying a family for every child by 2040. And so you start with a vision and then, you start working and everybody starts swimming in the same direction. And that is, in my opinion, the future of leadership, is collaboration. Do it your way. Like you said, LaToya, you do you, do it your way. Just let's fly in the same direction. And, like-minded actors acting is how you're really going to get to your final goal.
Absolutely. I love the way that now we're contextualizing this, just very similarly the way that Susan, commented and, helped all of us, including Captain Kelly, kind of reframe what menopause looks like moving forward. What you're saying, Caroline, totally reframes the analogy that people would use about crabs in a barrel, right? Or whatever it is, monkeys, crab, whatever it is, right? It was a disempowering frame. And all we have to do is just adopt the one that is empowering. So yeah, we can be the fish in the net, that break the net together. We can do many things to contribute to each other and collaborate. And all we have to do is just adopt the mindset, and then anything becomes possible. This is so cool. Loving the direction of this conversation. And goodness gracious, because we're having so much fun, it's just about that time where I'd love to ask you one more question, each of you, and also if you would kindly share where people can find you out in the world and on the internet. So this last question is just about looking towards the future. I'm curious, what quality do you believe that the next generation of women leaders can cultivate within themselves, so that way they can lead with, more heart, more authenticity, more impact, and really help to create that shift?
Vulnerability. That's it for me. And I say that it's the simplest but hardest thing to do. And it's just to be 100% unapologetically yourself. And I find that when I lead with vulnerability, when I lead with authenticity, and I am 100% myself 100% of the time, when I'm happy, they know it. And when I mean they, I mean my crew, just because it's such an intimate position with us being together 24/7. When I'm happy, they know it. When I'm sad, they know it. When I'm frustrated, they know it. And that has just fostered such a culture of everybody else being so sharing and opening. And I think, you know, for future generations, it's understanding that being vulnerable may be hard, but you're being authentically yourself. You're being 100% yourself. And it's just going to breathe that thought into the rest of your crew. And as hard as it may be, it's realizing you're human and just being yourself. And when you be yourself, that allows everybody else to open up and be themselves.
Yeah, that vulnerability is a superpower, isn't it?
It is such a superpower. But I say again, it's the simplest, hardest thing to do.
Got it. Got it. And Captain Kelly, where can we find you?
Oh, that part. I forgot that. You start talking about being vulnerable and I just get off on a tangent. So if you just go to my website, CaptainKellyJGordon.com, you'll find all of my other handles there. My handle is Captain Kelly J. Gordon on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of it. But again, CaptainKellyJGordon.com is my website, and you can find me there, and you can reach out and contact me if you wish as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. It's incredible to have a peek into your world and see all the super yachts and what's entailed with that lifestyle. So thank you for sharing with the rest of the world as well.
No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Caroline, would you like to hop in next and let us know which characteristic you feel is best to cultivate moving forward?
Yeah, it's close to vulnerability, but it's authenticity. Truly being who we are and allowing that, you know, it doesn't always have to be like at the center of logic. I mean, sometimes common sense is the name of the game. It's not always about figuring out the next steps. It's always about, you know, like listening to your heart. And, you know, it's an inside job. Part of my leadership is to regulate myself. You know, we have all these amazing tools at our disposal. We have breathing, we have meditation, we have prayer, we have all these tools at our disposal that will help us really be our vulnerable, authentic selves. And people love that. They you know, I think that the future of power, you know, power used to be like, this is, you know, this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it. Where the future of power is a more authentic, like, this is how I would do it. This is how I would approach it. And, you know, rest as a strategy. Rest is part of my life strategy for sure. And when I say, and play is a part of my strategy. When I say play, you know, it's anything that I'm interacting with that I'm enjoying. So, you know, I'm not interacting with Instagram. You know, Instagram is just interacting with me. I'm not really interacting with it, but I'm interacting with a conversation. I consider that play. I consider roller skating, which is something I do, a play. So play as a strategy. Some kind of meditation as a strategy, rest as a strategy, and all of that so that we can actually be our authentic people that we're put on this earth to be. That's what I think.
Love it. Love it. You know, talk about simplified, right? These are the things that we get to acknowledge. Some of us that we are already doing, and some of us that we can integrate a little bit more. Roller skating has inspired me, Caroline, personally. So thank you. Sydney, would you like to share next?
I think I would say adaptability is something that I think like future leaders or, you know, need to have as a quality for sure. Like I mentioned before, learning something new every single day. We have had our fair share of hiccups or obstacles, but we always end up on the other side. But it's because we're adaptable. We are able to, you know, look at something head on and strategize between the two of us and with our small team and figure out how to move forward in the best way possible. But I think even just adaptability comes into play with your staff as well, and people reporting to you and trusting you as their superior, and trusting like the community you're building, you know, that you can adapt to anything and you can take anything in. I guess that kind of sort of plays in with empathy as well. But I think being adaptable and not so set on one specific outcome, and allowing yourself to see that there are several outcomes, and maybe you have a preferred one, but there's always options and other ways to handle things, definitely helps in the day to day. And I feel like it's something that would impact the way that you lead in any instance. And then you can find us at Drink Shirley. That's our like our handle on social media. Our company name is Just Call Me Shirley. The whole premise is, we make Shirley Temple cocktails. They're called Dirty Shirleys, but she doesn't have to be dirty. Just call me Shirley. So our handle is at Drink Shirley, but our website is drink-shirley.com. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. And it's only right to insert Michaela in here.
Yes, I feel like this one is pretty like common sense, I feel, but confidence. I think for us going into an industry that we really don't know much about, one thing that we are confident about is what we've built and what we've created. And we know that it should be everywhere, and we're going to do everything that we can to get it that way. And, if we're met with a question that we don't know the answer to, it's not met with, I'm not really sure or whatever. It's like all, that's noted, and we'll find that out right after this, and I'll let you know as soon as possible. But just showing that we're confident in what we're doing, I feel like makes the person who's on the receiving end feel confident about it too. So I think that that's definitely one that we try to, and everyone else in the future should always go with.
Love it. Confidence as a tool, as opposed to this thing that we have to, like always strive for or fear or, question. Like, I love that. Let's just have it be present, in all of the things that we're doing. That's fantastic. And by the way, you can find Caroline at miraclefoundation.org. Just wanted to make sure that didn't get away from us there. Thank you so much for being here today. And Latoya, can you bring us home? What is that? What is that quality, that characteristic for you that you would really wish, for the future generations to cultivate?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to collaboration and teamwork. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, they say, but nobody does this alone. You got to have a team behind you to get this stuff done. And as leaders, it's our job to, keep everybody in the boat and just, rowing in the same direction. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I look to collaborate in any way that I, can. I got excited just seeing Michaela and Sydney because I'm already like, okay, there's going to be an opportunity to collaborate here, right? Like, I see that everywhere I go. If I go into a restaurant and I'm like, oh, you don't have this, I'm a distributor, maybe I can get this product, for you. And people are just so open to those opportunities when you say, look, I want to collaborate with you, but not in a way that just feeds me, right? In a way that makes sure everybody gets to be able to eat and feed their families and do the things that, they need to do. As well, the women that work with me, they're not just workers, they're owners in this, company. They have ownership. They get to own, pieces of a company, but they also get to own their customer base. They get to own, something. And so when you can collaborate in a true collaboration, because sometimes people think just if you have people around you working, that counts as collaboration. And that's not how I view it. I view it as something where people can really dig in and feel like they own a part of the company. And if you do that, I think you'll have less turnover as you continue to grow your organization as well. Because people like to stay where they feel like they're valued.
Yeah, totally. Like it's a human need, to belong. And when you start to incorporate that into your culture, of your workplace, it's like, oh, I'm getting my needs met at work. What? That can be a possibility that we can create for people. So thank you for speaking into that. Wow. This is a deep exhale at the end of a very incredible conversation thank you all for being incredible panelists. Thank you for the depth with which you shared your truth and your wisdom And also thank you to everyone who's watched us live and who will watch the replay. You are part of the conversation too, whether you're here and you're commenting and contributing, or whether you're just watching and observing. We get the impact of these kinds of conversations. So thank you for being a part of that. And by the way, this conversation, it doesn't end here. Like, each of us has a role in shaping what female leadership looks like next, right? So it's that the one that is inclusive, or the one that is intuitive, or the one that is rooted in collective success. We're all playing our parts. And what you heard here today is absolutely more than just insight. It's actually a call to action. So for those of you who are out here listening, please feel free to be in action about what it is that you heard today. If you could take one action based on what it is that you heard, it's time to really buckle down and to do that and be that and embody that where you are. So let's keep redefining what power means for us in our world. We will see you in the next conversation for 100 Women to Watch. Thank you again for being here. And until then, thank you. Be well, keep leading boldly, and bye for now.